Today's guest is Gabe Cohen, founder of Discovery Cafe, executive director of Kings and Priests Ministry. He's a chaplain, peer recovery coach, and a man who's walked through incarceration, homelessness, and addiction. Gabe, I want to start by going back to the version of you before all of this, before recovery, before Discovery Cafe, when life looked a lot different.
Sure. I mean, I'm turning into an old man, so it could be a really long story. I'll try to give you the shortest version. Um, but that I think hits all, the pertinent bullet points for my lived recovery experience. If that's fair, how's that sound?
Yeah, yeah. When you look back at your earlier life, what were some of the key forces that shaped your choices?
Sure, that's a great question. Um, all right, so let me start off by saying I grew up in uh, suburbia, middle class Long Island. I'm originally from New York. Um, we're out in Colorado now. I've been out here over 30 years, but I grew up in New York, and my parents didn't use drugs or alcohol. It wasn't really an issue in our house. But I do come from a family of Holocaust survivors. All my grandparents. I'm from a Well, my mom's parents were German Jews that escaped the Nazis, and then my dad's parents were Polish and Hungarian Jews. And we didn't grow up in a religious home. I guess you would call it like Reform Judaism. We didn't belong to a synagogue, but I was educated, to never forget the Holocaust. And like when my grandparents came up, it was like put all your toy soldiers away or put your like fake guns away. And I just remember trying to understand like how come I couldn't wear camouflage pants, because I kind of went through my army phase in 8th grade, and my ninja phase, um, but they would talk about the trauma of the war, and I would look at, be shown photographs of the horrific trauma that the Jewish people went through, and at that time. Um, so I think just some like generational type trauma, and then I also experienced, although I wasn't aware of how it would really impact my life until I got older and got into therapy and stuff. But I had some sexual abuse,
Hmm.
from not family, but people in neighbors, basically, people of trust, and just kind of grew up feeling like this is a scary world, and um I really wanted to be I felt like if I could be a tough guy, um I could protect myself and my family, and so I kind of gravitated to kind of like that macho kind of I guess tough guys, if you will, that were in my neighborhood, and started using drugs and alcohol as a teenager. Was kind of depressed, I guess. Didn't really know what was going on with me, but I always just the messages of not feeling good enough. Didn't have much reinforcement, I guess, positive reinforcement from my father, although he was a good, honest man. But worked a lot. He was a salesman in New York, and worked long hours, long days. Didn't see much of him growing up. Um, when I was 15, I got arrested for my first. Well, I mean, it was we were messing around with a pellet gun, and we were shooting at cars. Um, I was a knucklehead kid, and doing stupid stuff, and I got arrested for shooting somebody when I was 15. That was my first, encounter with law enforcement, and my parents were devastated, that I would do such a thing, and it kind of it put a strain on us, and then I really just that was the same year I got arrested when I was 15. I tried cocaine, and cocaine really, that was my drug of choice. It just, you know, um, made me feel numb to everything, made me feel powerful. I should add too that I had an older an older brother that was a drug dealer. He was 10 years older than me, and he was a half brother, so I didn't see him that often. We didn't live in the same community. But when I saw him, he was like this macho guy. He had the gold chains and the muscles and the tattoos, and I wanted to be like him. And so that's another piece to this puzzle, as far as how we represent ourselves now, right? And kids are going to want to model their behavior after us. It was just a big influence. So I started lifting weights in high school, and by the time I was 18 years old, I was working, at a gym, and got introduced to steroids. And so now I'm doing cocaine, I'm doing steroids, I'm smoking weed every day. I basically dropped out of high school. I went to my first rehab when I was uh, a senior in high. I dropped out, and then I wasn't going to pass. And then I went back home and told my parents what was going on. And they sent me to a 6-week program in Pennsylvania. So that was my first kind of introduction, I guess you'd say, to recovery, Narcotics Anonymous, going to meetings, the whole concept of having a sponsor. It was all new to me. And really, I went into my first rehab thinking, um, I want to learn how to not use dope so that I could still sell it and make that much more money, because I really turned into my best customer. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
I
I
mean,
do
I wasn't very good.
personally.
I was a hustler. I was a good salesman,
I was
but
not a good
I
drug dealer at all.
yeah, no, yeah. And so I came home from rehab. I'm 18 years old. Came home from rehab. 12 days later, my parents, find like half a pound of weed in my room because I started selling drugs right away, and they kicked me out of the house. And I have an uncle, um, that lives in Denver, Colorado. And at this time, by the way, I tried crack cocaine for my first time. So now I got addicted to crack. Really liked crack. And I'm doing steroids, I'm smoking crack, I'm working like in Astoria, Queens, Jamaica, Queens, in New York, like selling stolen dresses out of the back of my car. Um, Kind of in over my head, running with some dangerous people. And my uncle, bless his heart, said, "Why don't you?" He said, "I have a friend that's in Narcotics Anonymous. He goes to meetings every day. He goes, I'll buy you a one-way ticket and get on an airplane, pack a bag. I'll buy you a one-way ticket, and you come stay with us. But the deal is you gotta stay sober. Day one, my friend will take you to a meeting. You stop using, you find a job. If you want to go back to New York, you got to find your own way back to New York. If you relapse, you're out. You got one shot." And I what made it attractive was that I was smoking crack. I sold everything. I stole from my parents, stole from all my friends. I was robbing drug dealers. Like people were after me, so to speak. I did not. I was just going downhill, and I was like, "Cool,
Way out.
yeah, I'm on that plane, right?" Um, I went to Narcotics Anonymous, Denver, Colorado. They had this little clubhouse on 3rd Street off of Broadway. I'll never forget. And my uncle's friend picked me up, took me to meetings, and I stayed sober. I stayed clean for 6 weeks. Got myself a little job at a health club that my uncle belonged to, because I had that fitness background. And met a girl, invited me to a party. This is my justification at the time. I'm 19 years old, living with my aunt and uncle and my younger cousins, and so here's an opportunity to hang out with a girl my age. And so I go to this party. I have a couple of drinks against my better judgment, and the next thing I know, I'm asking people, um, like if I wanted to score some crack, where would I like? Where's the bad neighborhood around here? And they told me where to go, and I relapsed. I stayed out, I probably, 2 days, I think, and called my uncle, and he said, "You're done. Like, told you the deal." His wife was really upset, understandably so. And so I shared this with you just to kind of give you the backstory, really. So here I am, 19 years old. I'm halfway across the United States. I grew up in New York. I'm in downtown Denver, Colorado, and I'm homeless for the first time. Um, None of my family wants to talk to me, and I did this all to myself, these were my decisions. And so now I'm getting that new lived experience of going from middle class suburbia, Long Island to, following the other homeless guys, like where do we get some food, and going to the different feeding spots and, trying to figure out how to get more crack. So now I'm robbing and stealing and sleeping at homeless shelters, breaking into cars, stealing cars, just kind of street level drug addict. I wasn't into like hurting people. Like I wasn't like, I didn't want to physically assault anybody and try to steal money, but I was stealing property, which is not, I'm not saying it's better, but I was a thief, I was in survival, I was in drug addict survival mode, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, and probably lucky very lucky I'm still alive, there were gangs in Denver too. I'm like this naive white kid from Long Island who thought he was a tough guy because I'm from New York and supposed to be tough because you're from New York. And I found out I wasn't that tough, and there's gangbangers and there's guns and it was just like it was culture shock. And so I started all my misdemeanor arrests, from 19 to like 23. Like now I'm experienced going to the city jail, getting out, going to the county jail, and just in and out of jail, homelessness, living on people's couches, shacking up with the lady, getting kicked out because of my crack addiction, and not really much direction. Um, and by the time I'm 24, I meet my first wife. We have our first son, and we move up to the mountains. They call it the Western Slope. Well, there's lots of mountains in Colorado, but we moved up to the Western Slope to Glenwood Springs, Colorado. Now I'm talking back in 1994. And, basically it was like, we need to get out of Denver. And I started going to church. I really just started going to church with her because I was trying to save my marriage. I didn't know, and I don't want to turn this into like a Bible study, but I didn't know who Jesus was. I didn't know what this whole Christian thing was about.
Feel free to
And
share whatever it is that
okay,
feel free to share, man. There's I welcome everyone on this show, and the thing is,
thank you.
what works for you may work for a lot of other people.
Well, then I will say amen to that.
And I'm a Christian
Um,
too, so
Okay, well, all right, praise God, good. Um, and I'm very, I believe Jesus wants me to love everybody and respect everybody regardless of their faith or their life choices, um, but yeah, just to go back to that time. Because it's a big part of my recovery. I consider myself a faith-based guy, and but at the time, it was like, want me to go to church on Sunday? I'm just trying to save my marriage. I don't want to lose my kid, my first son. He's about a year old. And I got introduced, to the church, going to church, got a job as a carpenter's helper. Uh, I remember like I didn't even know how to read a tape measure. I had no experience with tools. I didn't grow up like in that with that lifestyle. And so I was the grunt on the job and got myself a tool belt and a hammer. And next thing I'm learning how to frame houses, trying to make an honest living. Um, I'm working in Aspen, Colorado. So Glenwood Springs is about 40 miles from Aspen. And I don't know if you know anything about Aspen. It's a beautiful place.
very beautiful.
There happened to be a lot of cocaine in Aspen. I'm sure there's probably a lot of cocaine in a lot of places if you're looking for it. Um, there were guys on my job site that were using, it wasn't crack, it was powder cocaine, but so I'm like, as long as I'm not smoking crack, then that's a plus, right? Just
Step up.
justifying my, yeah, it's a step up, right? I can spend $40 of my paycheck at a half gram on Friday and everything will be cool. Well, it wasn't cool because I can't do just a half gram. I mean, I don't know if you have experience with your own, if you're an addict or you have any experience with that.
Mostly methamphetamine, amphetamines, methamphetamines.
Yeah, and I have some later on in the story. Got into some meth use, but I just I don't like coming down. I don't, once I get high, I don't want to come down. So my cocaine use increased. We had our second son. Bless his heart. Both my boys love my sons. But when he was actually, she was pregnant with my second son. She was about 2 months, couple months before she went into labor to have my second son. I got arrested in Aspen with some cocaine. Um, That's a whole nother story. But basically, I was tweaked out of my mind, paranoid, thought the DEA was after me, and it was a whole thing. I was not thinking clearly. I'd been up for a couple days. Police noticed me, got arrested, had some cocaine on me. Um, got my first felony drug charge. So from 1996, just to fast forward, 96 to 98, I violated that probation. I got a deferred sentence, violated probation 5 times, took off from a halfway house, failed drug tests, just wasn't really willing to change. Still going to church with my wife, trying to go to meetings, trying to not trying hard enough, not really trying, just going through the motions, trying to make everybody else happy so that I could still do it my way. And finally, in late '98, um, they threw me back in the county jail, and I got my first prison sentence. They gave me 2 to 6 years, and they sent me to Buena Vista Correctional Center in Colorado State Prison. Yeah, at the time they called it, the nickname was Gladiator School. It was, and I was scared. I'll be
Yeah.
straight up. Like, here's my, I've been in and out of county jails, and I've lived on and off the streets, and I've had enough. I've seen violence and been on the receiving end of it, and been on the other end of it, and don't like it. But it was pretty daunting, man,
Yeah.
I write about it in my book. But pulling up, and seeing the razor wire, and just knowing, like, this is where you're going to be living the next couple of years. And the real pain for me in my heart was what I was doing to my kids, because their hearts were broken. Like, where's my dad? Right? Where's my dad? And I went to prison. Um, did served a couple years on that prison sentence, got out with 3-year parole. And so basically from 1998 to 2011, I was in and out of prison 7 different times. 4 of those times were parole violations. Um, one of my felony charges was I was at a halfway house and I had a GPS ankle monitor on. I got high, got paranoid, cut the ankle monitor off. They gave me 2 years for escape for cutting a piece of rubber off my ankle, right? But I was considered in custody. That's escape. Um, and yeah, and then I have a menacing felony charge. I threatened somebody. 4 of those. So 4 of those were parole violations. 4 of the 7 times. 4 of those 7 times that I got out of prison, I was paroled homeless. I went through like a decade, basically, of getting out of prison. So I would do like a year, get out, uh, just at various times. Maybe get an apartment. I'd start getting high again, get a job. Um, I kind of pull the carpet. My cycle was I could find opportunity and I could stay clean for a few months, but once I started using, then I would go back to jail. And then I would get out, then I would go back to prison. And then I would get out, and then I'd go back to prison.
Cycle.
So I was just back and forth. They call it the revolving door, right?
Yes, sir.
And yeah, I was diagnosed in prison as having bipolar disorder and PTSD, and they I was on lithium, about 2,000. They put me on like 2,000 milligrams of lithium, on and off. So I'd get on the lithium. They'd give me Seroquel to sleep, trazodone sometimes, and then I would get out. I'd get high and get off all my meds, and then I go back to the jail or the prison. They put me back on the meds. I functioned really well in prison, and I didn't want to get high on, prison can be a dangerous place. And it was interesting. It was almost like after I started learning that, I guess I needed the structure. I had no self-discipline. And when I would get out, it was like, for me, I was kind of in my own victim stance, like poor me, like I have nothing, I deserve nothing. Um, I'm not worthy of anything good. Look what I did to my parents. Look what I did to my kids. Look what I've done to my life. I'm 30 years old, uh, or however
Mhm.
old I was at the time, and it was just like, what I do know how to do is survive on the streets, and so it was almost like a sick comfort zone, for me. And
During
yeah, I was comfortable there.
during those prison terms, can you kinda go
Hmm.
a little bit more in detail what it was like emotionally, mentally, and spiritually during that time?
Sure. Yeah. I'm really glad you asked me that, because I guess I still kind of feel some stigma from it when I start talking about it. I'll mention it, but I don't
No.
spend too much time there. I don't know if
Yeah,
people are
no.
really
So,
interested in
like,
it, but
just a little bit about myself. I have a 10-year amphetamine, methamphetamine. I've used all sorts of drugs. Drugs was a big part of my life. And my wife, she has a history also and has experienced incarceration. And so there's definitely no judgment. My day job, I do it not because it's a job, because it's my passion. I'm a correctional counselor as well,
right
treatment
on.
programs within the prison. So this is,
Nice.
I mean, I'm all about it. I've been following you on
All right.
Instagram. I'm like, I want to talk to this guy, and so I really
Oh,
appreciate you
thank you,
being
man.
on today. And so I take these and I try to put them in front of. I show them to my clients and as much as possible.
Oh,
Try to get the
nice.
word out. So, um, and people that are just as involved are a big population that I try to reach. So please,
Sure.
please,
Cool.
emotionally, mentally,
Well, thanks.
spiritually, going through that, I know it's very difficult. And you mentioned that it provided structure, and then also there's institutionalism. So it's
Mhm.
like, what was that
I
like
didn't
for
mind
you?
going back. Yeah, there were times. And by the way, thank you for sharing all that and giving me some background. 'Cause I certainly have a passion to work with the justice involved individuals, because I've been there. Um, yeah, there were times when I was so strung out and hungry, tired, scared, lonely, on the streets, where I mean, there's a time I walked right into the police station and said, "There's a warrant out for my arrest. Like, here I am. Can you take me to jail?" Like cuff me up, uh, because I knew I could get some rest. I'd eat. Sometimes I needed medical attention. Um, and I knew the routine. It was like I would, especially when I was on the run, like if there was a warrant out for my arrest, or I skipped out on parole, it was like, I'm just gonna, basically, I used to call it temporary suicide. Like, I'm just gonna keep, hopefully I don't die or get, I don't overdose or get murdered out here. But I'm just gonna keep using until I can't take it no more. Hopefully I won't die. Like, I almost had a death wish. And there were times where going to prison or jail was like a relief. And when I say relief, because I mean, I remember times where I would hold my Bible just like on my chest, like it was a teddy bear, like a security blanket, because it would give me yet another opportunity to spend time with God, where I would read my Bible, and I went through some different phases too, of like, because I come from a Jewish family, and it was like, maybe, I started reading some psychology books, and like Carl Jung, and go back to the roots of your father. So I'm like, maybe I need to get into Judaism more, so I started trying to practice Orthodox Judaism at one time, and was reaching out to all the Jewish organizations and trying to get stuff mailed in, and was getting the kosher meals. It wasn't, working for me. And then I was like, well, I dig the whole Jesus message, like he can save me and I could be born again and I could be forgiven. And where I was getting hung up on was the whole, like what does faith mean? Like, how do I say, okay, one day I believe in this, and then today, like, I sincerely can say I believe in this, something different. And so I struggled there, and but I just kept reading my Bible. So then I started attending like Messianic Jewish services, so it was just some Jesus and there was some Jewish stuff in there, and um I was like on this spiritual journey, man. I really I wanted I wanted God to save me, and I wanted to be shown how I could be part of saving my own life. Like, what did I need to do? And so I was searching, and it was a journey. I mean, as soon as I got into prison, it was like, I'm gonna write my mom and dad, I'm gonna apologize. I remember my sister, oldest sister as well, and she would always cry when she found out I was in jail, but it was like happy tears because she knew I was still alive, because they wouldn't even hear from me. And that's kind of when they knew I would be off the deep end. And then I would resurface in jail or prison. And they were like, thank God he's still alive. He has yet another opportunity. Um, and just the real pain for me was just I just missed my kids. It was really interesting. It's like if you missed your kids so much and you love your kids so much and you want change so much. I understand now, being on the other side of my addiction and in recovery. I understand how people that don't have a history of addiction don't understand it. I spent so
Right.
much time and energy trying to get my parents to understand that I'm sick. Like they were like, you were doing so good. Like we just don't understand, and I understand that now. Um,
Almost that, I mean, and that's where it's so important to educate the community that it's not just a matter of willpower, especially in early recovery, that it goes much deeper, or it's not a question of morality.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'm sure you've heard it. You're a counselor, right? And you're in recovery. Like, never. It's not that I didn't love my children. It's not that I wanted to break their hearts or my mother's heart. My poor parents, right? Everything that I put them through growing up. So I think I needed to feel all that. I needed to think about all that. I needed to learn, and for me, I needed to learn um, who God was, and really for me, who God said I was, and why God died for me. Right? Why did Jesus go to the cross for me, for a guy like me? Like why would he do that? And the epitome is, at least from my perspective, as I understand it, is love. He loves us. He loves us. And he wants us to live for him. He wants us to submit. And that's where I really struggled with it. Like, I worked, I guess, for like decades trying to become this persona, this tough guy that I felt I needed to be to survive in this world. And one, it was killing me. It was taking away my freedom. And And it was the exact opposite of what God was calling me to do. It was pride, and it was ego, and it was fear. I mean, I was really just scared and insecure, and I was trying to have these muscles to make me feel more secure and more powerful and in control, when I was really just
It was a mask.
scared inside, and feeling lost in society, feeling like damaged goods, not worthy, and almost like at that bottom of that pit, of like, how am I ever going to get out of this? I've got 3 felonies. I've been to prison 7 times. The sixth time I got out of prison, I signed some paperwork. They called me down to medical, and they said this is for SSI, for Social Security, that the state was deeming me, I guess, mentally disabled, that I was unable to work because I had been in prison on and off. I couldn't hold a job. I was mentally unstable. I was a crackhead. All those things, all those labels, and now the state was willing to give me a check for $700 a month and food stamps, and I didn't have to work, apparently, and I could get a rent voucher from parole. And I kind of, at that time, I thought I hit the jackpot. I'm like, wow, this is
Right.
okay. This is cool, I guess. And then I took a crack hit, and then I'm selling my food stamps, and then $700 doesn't go very far in this world. a month, and that was back in 2010. So I went back to prison the seventh time, and that's really where my life started to change. Although it still took me like a decade to kind of get to where becoming the man that I am today. But in 2011, I was sent back to prison the seventh time for 6 weeks. Man, they wanted me to kill my number, so to speak. I don't know if you ever heard that expression before, but like finish my parole. The last 6 weeks of a
Okay.
3-year parole in prison for another violation, and that's where I was reading the New King James version of the Bible, and I was in Revelations, and it was chapter 1, verse 6. It's even to back up in chapter in verse 5 and 6, really, it says, those that believe in the Lamb of God, he has made them kings and priests. And for some reason, that the kings and priests just kind of illuminated out at me, because so what was going on in my head at that time is okay, so my oldest son is about to graduate high school. Like, I just missed like their whole childhood. Right. I got a boy in 10th grade. I got a boy in 12th grade. I don't even know if they want to talk to me ever again. Um, I'm a deadbeat dad. I'm a 3-time felon. I'm mentally disabled. I'm going to get out broke and homeless. I'm not going to have any money. I don't have a driver's license. I mean, once again, I have nothing. And I was just really depressed and down on myself. But when I read those words in the Bible, it says, no, God has made you a king and a priest. And then the commentary in my Bible, and I thought, kind of first like, oh, I'm a king, got kind of all proud, and the commentary was telling me that when it says king, it's talking about the way Jesus is our king, a king of service. Jesus came to serve, right? And remember when he washed his disciples' feet before he went to the cross. And so it's that authority is to serve in the kingdom of God, to be of service, to be committed to God. And then a priest, the dual office of king and priest, or a kingdom of holy priests, as it says in some versions, um, to praise and to worship him and to be grateful and to bless other people, right? And so to me, that gave me purpose, that gave me identity. So that was kind of like the first notch of like, okay, I'm really going to pursue studying the Bible and get back into church. When I got out of prison the seventh time, all I wanted to do was reestablish a relationship with my two sons. Um, I was first time I was off parole for 10 years, so I could move anywhere I wanted in the state. And so I moved. I went into a hostel. They had open beds. It was like $35 a night for a cot, in the same community here where my sons were in high school. Um, and I went to duly diagnosed groups twice a week. I went to individual counseling. I went to AA because there was no NA in our community. There was only an AA meeting. Um, and I went to church. And I wanted to get off SSI, and so I started working as a carpenter again. And that same year, I had no intention. I know they say don't get into a relationship. I had no intention of getting into a relationship, but that same year, it was 2011. I met my current wife, um, and she got pregnant, and our son, my son with her. So I've got 3 sons now. We had a baby boy. He needed to have open heart surgery, emergency open heart surgery, when he was 3 months old. And my wife started coming to church with me. She was not a Christian at the time when we met either. But when we found out about our son, she started coming to church with me. My son had successful open heart surgery, praise God, and um, it really started. I would get, you know, 6 months clean, and I would relapse for a weekend. I'd get another 8 months clean. I was just trying to get a year sober. I was working a full-time job. I also got into, at that time, I took my first Krav Maga class. I don't know if you know what Krav Maga is.
I've heard of it.
It's a hand-to-hand combat. It's
Okay.
basically a self-defense system that the Israeli military uses. It was created for the Israeli military, and I was attracted to it because of my uh, Jewish
Mm-hmm.
background, and there was some Krav Maga lessons going on in this community that I was in at the time, and I took my first class when I was 40, and I made a goal that I wanted to get my black belt. I always wanted to be a black belt in a martial art, and so I started training Krav Maga, and became an instructor, and I started my own Krav Maga business. I was teaching self defense in my community and working towards my black belt. And then I got into the security field. Um, Even though I was a felon, I was in good shape. I was in my 40s, and I was studying Krav Maga, and I got a job with a security company and started running nightclub security, and not the greatest place to work if you're trying to stay sober. Um, so again, it was like this identity crisis of like, I'm teaching classes, kind of like the whole tough guy thing
Yeah.
again. I'm a martial artist. I'm a bouncer at a bar. I'm doing construction. I hate construction, but I need to make a living. And I was trying to make a living doing martial arts, and I started training in some other martial arts. I got my first black belt when I was 46, and my instructor at the time, um, invited me to be on the cover of one of his books. And so that's when I got introduced to Facebook and social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I started my Facebook page for my Krav Maga business, and um, started networking in that community. And I started traveling across the United States.
Did
Yeah, do you have a
did
question?
becoming a Krav Maga instructor, um, did that assist in your shift from becoming into becoming a mentor and advocate for others? Do you like those instructional type skills?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I guess short answer, yes. It was like a It was like a double-edged sword. It was almost there was like wearing 2 hats in a way, because on one hand, um, for me personally, like starting from scratch, having no experience, like not knowing how to throw the proper kick, or, learning different techniques, learning something new, it really built my self-esteem. I mean, it's part of my recovery story for sure. Like I am capable. I can learn new things. I am good enough. And so it boosted my self-esteem. It boosted my self-confidence, especially because the system that I was in, it had 5 levels, and it had instructor levels. And then I was invited to go train. They had, excuse me, a law enforcement instructor course. And I said, my instructor said, you're not the same man that you used to be despite your criminal record. And they invited me to come train with law enforcement officers, and I became a certified Krav Maga law enforcement instructor, even though I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I got the certificate to train. And so it really boosted my self-esteem and my morale. Really like uh helping people learn, and teaching, and being a positive role model. At the same time, I still had a hard time. I wasn't all in recovery wise. I still was trying to do it my way. And I started getting gigs like, so I have a company called American Krav Maga. I have a little studio in our town, and I have a couple private clients. I don't have time to teach classes anymore on a regular basis, but I still want it in my life. I love it. But my American Krav Maga business, I started shooting videos in my backyard of you don't have to be part of these big organizations that have high monthly dues. I was teaching classes in my backyard, had $10 drop-in fee if anyone wanted to learn. I was teaching at the park. I was teaching at the local community center. I couldn't afford my own like school, my own dojo. And I started putting videos out there. And then I had a guy in New York that was like, hey, I was part of this big company, but they want $400 a month to be part of their organization, and I only have a handful of students. And he really liked the message I was putting out. I flew to New York, trained him as an instructor. I created a logo, and started selling like affiliate packages. So then I was like in California and Montana. I started traveling New Mexico, teaching, doing seminars. Went to Argentina, Europe. Um, but I share that with you because when I would leave town, I'd get high and then try to get it back together and come back home and then stay sober. It was almost, and then it was started getting bad to like where I couldn't get on the airplane, where I was just too paranoid to go to the airport, or I didn't want my wife to see me getting off the airplane. Um, and by the way, during this time, my wife had left me 3 times because of my drug use, So it was when you ask about, I loved being a Krav Maga instructor, and I was doing women's self-defense seminars, like teaching women how to be safe. I've been a guest instructor at the Law Enforcement Academy here at the college in our community. I've trained law enforcement officers. One of the black belts under me was a Chicago police officer. We've become pretty good friends. But I had like this secret drug use life. Okay. This is, basically in my 40s. Uh, in 2018, I worked my way up to working local bars, doing security, to once I became a black belt and started traveling and making kind of a name for myself in the Krav Maga community. I started getting higher end gigs up in Aspen and working at private clubs and doing some like celebrity protection and close protection, executive protection for a company. In 2018, I overdosed on cocaine, and uh, I was rushed to the hospital. I had kidney failure. So I had what they call rhabdomyolysis, which is my body was extremely dehydrated, and it releases toxins into your blood that affects your kidney function. Like people die from it. And so they didn't know if my kidney function was going to come back. I was hospitalized. I was hooked up to IVs, and for like 3 or 4 days, there was no improvement of my kidney. They were talking like, you're going to need a transplant, or you're going to die, or God willing, your kidney function will come back. But like, those are like the 3 options. I was stage 5, or I think stage 5 kidney failure. I think it goes to 6. I was either 4 or 5, whatever's right before death. I mean, that's where I was at. And I was just praying and praying, and basically prayed that if you let me walk out of here, I am all in and I will serve you. Um, I wanted to serve. I was applying at the local county jail. Like I wanted it. At that time, right before I overdosed, I felt like I knew something had to give. And I felt like if I could just be of service, I wanted to be of service in the recovery community, but I didn't have my own recovery yet, and I thought, I don't know if you see this in your field, but I can see it now too, being on the other side of it, where I wanted to be of service because I thought that would help me stay clean.
Yeah.
And if I was of service, then this is going to do it. Then I overdosed, and my application for the sheriff's department to go in as a volunteer to do Bible study had been approved. And then I was hospitalized for cocaine overdose. They didn't know that. I walked out of the hospital, and what really spoke to me, talking biblically, was when Christ told Peter that you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter's like, there's no way I'm going to deny you. Right. And in the end, Peter denied him. But look at in the next chat in Acts, look how God used Peter at Pentecost. Right. And so that really encouraged me. And that's really when, the concept of, for me at least, like, and I heard it at one of my CCAR recovery coach trainings. They say you're in recovery when you say you're in recovery, because everyone's recovery looks different. And
Yeah.
I just felt like the door was open at the county jail, and this was between me and God. If the jail knew, like I literally just had like 6 days sober, like I just got out, they probably wouldn't let me in the jail. But I went in there. I wasn't lying about my sobriety. Nobody asked me how much clean time I had right off the bat. And so I just started doing Bible study. I just started Kings and Priests ministry in the county jail. And I went to AA. I got a sponsor. that had 40 years sobriety, a retired English teacher, Bob, who was great, helped me save my life. I went to AA, I went back to therapy, I went to church, and I quit my full-time job. I quit working at the nightclub. I just cut all the people off that I used to use with, and I was all about being of service and going and doing my recovery, putting in my work for me, and then being of service to others. And that I really never looked back, you know. Um, and I started in one county jail, and then it opened up a second county jail. And I thought it would be great if I could make a living doing this, but right now it's not about the money. Um, I was blessed. My wife had a full-time job, and I was still teaching Krav Maga on the side to make a little extra money. I would do some safe security jobs, like, working at like a museum or something, standing there for 8 hours, whatever, to kind of make some money. But I wanted to be of service, and then I started volunteering at the parole department. I said, if you get a guy that gets out of jail, or you get a guy that gets out of prison and he needs a ride to Walmart, to get some shoes, or wants to like apply for food stamps. Like, I know where all the community resources are because I've been through those hoops. And if I'm available, I'll come down and pick them up. And I established a relationship with the parole department, just like being that guy in the community that they could call to help guys out, or if a guy was going through something, they would call me to come down and mentor him. Um, and then COVID hit, 2020. So for about 2 years, I was being of service, volunteering, started kind of like street ministry stuff, just going out and having conversations with people on the streets, handing out hygiene packets and serving food when I could. Um, COVID hit, and I had some guys that I had been ministering to in the jail getting out of jail, and everything was shut down. The AA meeting, and the only AA meeting in town was non-existent. Right? There was no jobs. There was no place to go get a free meal. Um, and that's kind of where I I thought, I'm gonna go rent a building, and we'll get a crock pot. I mean, whatever the health department says we need to do, I'll wear masks, we'll get hand sanitizer, but like, I'm gonna serve food, and we'll have an all recovery meeting. If AA wants to come in and host a meeting, like, as long as I'm gonna do this till they tell me I can't do it. I had no experience. I really didn't know where to start. And I pitched the idea to one landlord because businesses were hurting too. Like, it was hard to like rent out some retail stores at the time.
And this
I
is
found a
this
place.
is the foundation for Discovery Cafe.
Yeah, yes, sir. Absolutely, yes, sir. Thank you. And I pitched the concept to the landlord, and he liked the idea. And I also, at that time, I had taken my first recovery coach training with entity called CCAR. They're based out of Connecticut, and that's really when I learned about that there's multiple pathways to recovery. It really opened up my eyes to what was outside of my rural community. I'm in a very transient, kind of a tourist community, Glenwood to Aspen, but they call it Down Valley. As you get further away from Aspen, it's more rural, more blue collar, conservative. And there was a need. And there was only 2 treatment providers in our community. There was no overnight homeless shelter, with very little resources. And so I thought, I could do recovery coach training. An opportunity opened up to teach the substance abuse class at the parole department. I'm not a drug and alcohol counselor, but I knew a guy in AA meetings he was a CAC 2. And I talked to parole. I said, what does it take to do this class? And they told me, contact DOC, Department of Corrections, get the paperwork. I partnered with this drug and alcohol counselor. I started my first for-profit business doing the classes for the parole department. We went to go open our first Discovery Cafe, renting that building, serving lunch, everything for free. I started applying for my first grants. Got awarded my first $50,000 grant in. I found out we were getting it in 2020, but we wouldn't get the first check until February of 21. And right before we were going to open, the local city hall found out what business we were going to put in there, if you will. It was a nonprofit. I had to start a nonprofit, and that's
Yeah.
Kings and Priests Ministry. And so what we wanted to do was we wanted to serve lunch, and we were told by the health department that we needed to have a special dishwasher in order that, there was a certain code
Hmm.
for things to be clean to serve food. We weren't going to sell food. We were just going to serve it, but we needed to do some plumbing work. And so the plumber went to City Hall to apply for a permit. And then City Hall said, "What's going in there?"
Yeah.
And then they went and told some of the neighbors. And then I got the first taste of, like, the not in my
Resistance.
backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They were like, "Oh, you're going to serve felons, homeless people, drug addicts. Um, they're all going to come to our street." And I'm like, they're already here. Like, they're here and nobody's helping them. And they're like, "Well, this is zoned." So I got
Hmm.
my first lesson on zoning. This is zoned for a retail business that generates sales tax for the city. So check this out, man. They were okay with the head shop that sold crack pipes, meth
Oh, yeah.
pipes, all the paraphernalia. That was a block and a half away. That was okay to be in business. And I think that attracts felons, drug addicts,
Oh, yeah.
and some homeless, you know?
If not, makes them.
But I want to help people, and that wasn't okay. But I had contacted the local newspaper. They ran a story on it. So the landlord dropped us from the lease. So before I even got my first check for the grant, and I laid out my own money, I put $900 deposit on the building. I painted the walls. Nobody was putting any money in my pocket at this time yet. Um, the newspaper article came out, like, recovery center on hold. And the dean at the local community college saw the article. Very next day, called me up and said, "I don't know if it would work for you or not at our campus, but because of COVID, everyone's basically doing classes online. If you want it, we have a mask mandate on campus, but as long as you're willing to follow the rules, I think we can lease you a classroom."
It's
Which
incredible.
was really cool because they had a full gymnasium, they had a computer lab. I mean, it was a college campus, and they had a maintenance guy that cleaned up. I didn't have to worry about clogged toilets or anything like that. Um, it was like a godsend, man. So I bought 5 leather chairs, and we bought prepackaged food as per the health department. So we weren't making anything, we weren't handling
Hmm.
any food ourselves. And that first seed money, that first grant I got, gave me a little salary. I started the grant, simple budget. It was $50,000, and I'm like, if I could make $500 a week to support my family, um, that's enough. I could pay my phone bill. I can pay my car insurance. I can contribute a bit to our family's, food and bills. I'm willing to do this for $500 a week. So that's 26,000 out of that 50. Then I needed about 8,000, 10,000 for rent, and I needed a couple thousand for food and insurance. And just real simple budget. We started Discovery Cafe. We call it Discovery Cafe, a sanctuary for new beginnings. You can look it up online, discoverycafe.org. And I got a couple volunteers. We did recovery coach trainings we offered for free for the community. We have what we call discovery groups, where we just ask people if they have any current struggles or any victories in their lives that they want to share, with just an open format. It doesn't have to be just for addiction. It could be anybody struggling with anything, any kind of trauma. Um, Homelessness, duration, people going through domestic violence. We just wanted to create like a safe space where people can come, and there's other people in recovery with a lived experience that can give them some support. And then we kind of look at ourselves as like a resource broker, right? So if someone needs some mental health counseling, we know who to call. If someone needs housing, we know who to call. You need to go to maybe sober living or treatment, we know who to call. Maybe we can get you a scholarship. So really just being, that non-traditional kind of resource for people that might be struggling in recovery.
Where can people support you in your mission in the Discovery Cafe and the peer recovery coaching?
Thank you. We do have, if anyone's so inclined to donate, we have if you go to discoverycafe.org, discoverycafe.org, right on our homepage, there's a donate button. And if you just go there, um, you can donate online if you're more comfortable sending a check. Discovery Cafe falls underneath the umbrella. The actual nonprofit that I started back in 2020 is called Kings and Priests Ministry. It's a registered 501(c), PO Box 754, Newcastle, Colorado 81647. But if you go to my website, you can donate online. We started with one Discovery Cafe. We've since moved from the college to the downtown public library in Rifle, Colorado. This is a rural community where there wasn't very many resources, and there still isn't. Um, and we have a second location in Glenwood Springs now. We've also, since 2020, have had the opportunity to purchase 2 houses. And so I have 2 sober living homes for justice-involved men, the Kings and Priests Ministry sober living homes. I have, I think, 8 guys right now that are either on parole or probation, that are doing well, living at the house. And then we introduced our group, our discovery groups, to the Colorado Department of Corrections. So I've currently in 4 different prisons. I was in the Youthful Offender Services prison out in Pueblo. We've secured several grants since then. And now moving forward, though, this new fiscal year, we're going to focus just on one integration center within the prison system. And I'm in the local county jail where this all started back in 2020. Yeah. Oh, and if I may, and I have a new book. Yeah.
And where
That
can we
tells this
find
whole
that?
story. Yeah. So this is available on Amazon. It might be backwards because of my camera, but it's called the Peer Recovery Community Organization: How to Leverage Your Lived Experience and Create a New Legacy. It's available, like I said, on Amazon. And I have a new business website for myself. What I'm hoping to do, sir, is I'd like to inspire other people that have a lived experience, whether, we all have unique lived experiences, whether it's like mine or it's something different. But if you feel that you're called to be of service in your community, in this book, it's like the lessons I learned. Like, how do you start a nonprofit? What's a board of directors? Why do I need a board of
Very
directors?
cool.
How do I find the right staff,
And that's
And it just yeah.
that's the nuts and bolts of how to really get your dream off the ground. So thank you for providing that.
Yeah, no, thanks for this opportunity. I really, I wanted to tell the story. There's some stories about myself, which speaks to why I do the work I do. But it's more like this book's more about my new lived experience of
Hmm.
starting a nonprofit with no experience and navigating through the state agencies and different government agencies, Department of Corrections, and how we're doing it, and how you can do it too. So
Man,
yeah, thanks for this
before
opportunity.
we close today, is there any message you'd like to share directly with those who are listening, whether they're struggling, rebuilding, or just trying to figure out what comes next?
Yeah, I think it's just really important to remember that you are loved, you were created with great purpose, um, and you're worthy and you're worth it. And don't give up. Don't give up. You'd be surprised how many people actually want to help you today. And you just got to be willing to go ask for help. Don't give up because you're worth it. Yeah.
Gabe, thank you for your story. For those listening, thank you for listening to Pathways to Recovery. Like, follow, share if this helped you. It might help someone else too.
Thank you, Joshua.